Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Snyder. Thank you so much for joining me, and welcome to another episode of the CD and Vinyl Guys. Today, we're going to talk about Iron Maiden's Senjutsu. 17th studio album came out back on September 3rd. So we've lived with this now for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, almost 2 months here. And the kind of question comes up like, was the album worth it? It was a 6-year wait between albums and really enjoyed it when it came out. But now having lived with it, how do we feel about it? So this is going to be like an honest review of Senjutsu. Was it worth it? And I'm just going to open it up to you, Chris. How do you feel about this? What were your thoughts when it first came out, maybe versus now? We'll kind of start there.
Well, I always get excited for a new Iron Maiden album, especially since Bruce came back. Again, I like the Blaze stuff.
Yep.
But it was exciting to have Bruce back. So I always get excited. We saw the cover, I thought it was such a great cover. I was getting excited. The excitement was building. I heard a couple of those first singles. I was like, yeah, okay, this is going to be good. And I listened to it a lot the first couple of weeks that I had it.
Right.
And like you and I were discussing a little bit before this video, I feel like I haven't pulled the record out in a while to listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with this is I really enjoyed it when it came out. And for being new music and for being Iron Maiden, and I like the album. What I'm finding is I don't really remember any of it. So when I think about, oh, hey, do I want to pull the album out? There isn't like a standout song that I go, oh, God, I got to put that on and play it. But when I do put the album on, I enjoy it and I listen to it all the way through. So it's not that the songs, I don't like them, but for some reason, they're not sticking with me.
Yeah, and I think... And I don't want to come across as a music snob because a lot of times when people say, oh, the production sucks, like people start to say, oh, this guy thinks he knows everything about music. I don't know everything about music. I almost wish they went with a different producer. I think Kevin Shirley, I think he's produced everything since Brave New World.
He has, yeah.
I don't like his production.
You don't? Okay. I think that he's actually what has saved the band personally.
Okay.
But what I have found is like on X Factor and Virtual 11, you have the albums that Steve Harris produced. Those are the same muddied production sound that you're getting now. And I think it's something that the band wants. And I don't really get it. Production in terms of what he gets out of the band, not sound. I like Kevin Shirley. He's in my opinion, but then, I know Kevin Shirley also from producing other artists, from producing Glenn Hughes and, Black Country Communion and stuff like that. And he's done some other bigger artists and those albums sound fantastic. Yeah. So to me, it's not Kevin Shirley, but I know what you're saying. There's something about the production that they've been doing for the last 10 years on this that is muddied and the stuff is pushed in the back. And that's what this is here. There's so much going on in the music, but you can't really discern all of it. And it just sort of blends into the background. I think that's part of why, for me at least, the songs aren't sticking with me.
Well, I think another reason too is that the album is long. It's an hour and 21 minutes long. So to me, that tells me that there could have been some editing there. So probably what's happening for you is what's happening for me is there's so much going on. It's hard to kind of latch on to a song or a melody or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what I also find is there's a number of these songs where there's these intros on them. Yeah. There's 2 minutes of slow, dirgy buildup. And then when it kicks in, it's like, okay, this has classic Maiden riffing, galloping, all that sort of stuff on it. Right. But I had to listen through this other part. And I think that turns a lot of people off. I kind of don't mind it, but I do wish they had actually segmented the track and called it an intro or given it its own title or whatever as a segue piece. And then you could actually, jump to some of these tracks that are Maiden-esque sounding. And there is a number of those on the album, but they're buried in the middle of these epic long tracks. They're 8 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever. And it's like you clipped off the end and the beginning and you have a nice 4 or 5 minute, Iron Maiden tune right there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's where that editing comes in. And, talking about the track list here, you said some of those Maiden things are buried. I agree with you because one of my favorite songs on this record is The Time Machine.
Oh, I love that one too. But it's
And
got
that's track 6.
right. And that's got one of those melodic intros at the beginning and an outro at the end. And it doesn't kick in for a bit, but there's 5 minutes of pure Maiden-esque right in the middle of it.
Yeah. A lot of people too have been talking about the last 3 songs, which are the Harris originals, Death of the Celts, The Parchment, and Hell on Earth.
Yeah.
And I know when I originally did a video about this, I reviewed the record. Those 3 tracks stood out for me, and they still do. I even though that's a long section of the album, those last songs, but I think there's a lot of cool Maiden-esque stuff going on. It keeps it interesting. And you do have some of those intros and things like that, but I feel like it works for those 3 songs at the end.
I agree. When I first listened to this, disc 2 jumped out at me. I listened to it not as all one thing together. I waited till I got the CDs and I listened to what is disc 1 separate from disc 2. So I listened to the 4 tracks that make this up. I like the intro, the rain that plays at the beginning of the first song, Darkest Hour, and the segues into it. And even though it's only 4 tracks long, for whatever reason, I like disc 2, those 4 tracks as a whole for an album better than the 6 tracks that were on the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to put the second disc on myself. And it's funny because, you know, people who have watched our videos before, they know us as the CD and vinyl guys, and you guys can see that I have a lot of Maiden vinyl. This isn't even all the Maiden vinyl I have. But when this album came out, I chose to buy it on CD because the vinyl is it's a triple vinyl. So it's almost like too big and too much to handle. And I'm like, you know what? I just need the CD version. Plus, I wasn't sure whether I was going to like it or not. And I'm so glad that I just got the CD of it.
Well, that's also an oddity in that they specifically, there's a couple of things here. One, we were complaining about this early on, and I said this in my review. There's no track listing on this. Yeah. Okay. So you have to take the booklet out. We take the booklet out. And the only place the track listing is on the back side of this. But interesting from the last album, Book of Souls, which did put the track listing on it, thank goodness, they don't delineate between disc 1 and disc 2. So it's really hard to know where you are within this. And when you got to pop on another disc, it's like, where am I? Right. This one here actually did. It broke it into disc 1 and disc 2 in this. So you mentioning the vinyl part of this, and it's 3 vinyls. That means that it doesn't segment up like this. So now, did they intend for us to listen to it as 2 separate things, the way they're talking about it here? Or on vinyl, where it's going to be 3, and now how are you listening to it? And I don't know. I just think that bands really need to get back to this idea of the beginning of an album, the end of an album. If it's a vinyl made something like the new Yes album, the record label specifically wanted a 45-minute or less album because they wanted it all to fit on vinyl. So they allowed them to have a bonus disc with some extra things, but they thought about it and said, we want to, what is the opening track on side A, the one that's the opening track on side B? How does it start and stop? I want bands to do more of that. And it sounds like Iron Maiden is not. They're just going for length, 80 minutes, whatever it is, divide it up however, and you listen to it. And in the streaming world, that's okay because it is just all together. But in terms of CDs and vinyl, it's not.
Yeah, and talking to kind of piggyback on what you're saying about the length, I think, and this is nothing against Steve Harris. I mean, I love Steve Harris. I love Maiden. But I feel like sometimes Steve Harris thinks like the song's got to be long to be good.
It's got to be epic.
It's got to be long to be epic. I mean, you can have an epic song that's 5 minutes long.
Yeah, well, look at Future Real on X Factor, and we're both huge Blaze Bayley fans, so you'll have to forgive us. But Future Real, that's short. That's like 2.5 minutes. I think that's an epic song.
Oh, it's great.
A huge galloping, over the top, bombastic style, in your face song. It is epic and memorable, and it doesn't have to be 10 minutes.
And what's funny is you mentioned Future Real, and what happens, this track that follows that is The Angel and the Gambler,
right?
Which I like that song, but it's one of those songs that sort of falls into that, hey, Steve Harris, we need you to be edited a little bit because
It's
that's
too long, and they repeat the line over and over and over in that. I'm like, stop. I don't need to hear it anymore. So, I mean, we might be coming down a little bit here and there on Iron Maiden as a whole, but you guys all know, and you can see what's around us. We're huge Iron Maiden fans. So what we're really doing here is just doing an honest explanation of how we feel about some of these things. And for this album,
and I wanted to say too,
Mhm.
and you and I were discussing this before, there's a lot of people who are saying this is their favorite Iron Maiden album from post 2000 since Bruce came in.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I don't see that. I personally, I think this is a good album. I did an album ranking of all 17 of these, and I don't recall exactly where it fell, but I do think I put this somewhere towards the 9 or 10, 11, maybe somewhere in the kind of in the middle. And I did put it above, I think, like Dance of Death and a couple others that Matter of Life and Death. And people were like really surprised about that. But I have to say that some of the production value on those other ones, I didn't care for. And so for me, this one fell where it did. But then I was also doing this ranking, I think, a week after the album came out. And I'm, honest to say, over time, I don't know. It could slide up or down within it. But that was a snapshot of where I was with it. And people were responding to that saying, a couple people came in and said it was their best ever. They put it down in the top 3. I don't hear that. It is a good album. I'm enjoying it, but I don't think it's going to be one that I go back to all that often. That being said, I do think it's better than Book of Souls. A lot of people loved Book of Souls, and I just couldn't get into it. This one here, I do enjoy listening to.
I sort of put Book of Souls and this album, they're like sort of like sister albums to me.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they could have taken some songs from Senjutsu and some songs from Book of Souls. Book of Souls, thank you. I was going to say Brave New World. Book of Souls, and make like the ultimate album. I mean, obviously you can't do that.
Right.
Because I like a lot of the tunes on Book of Souls. I like a lot of the song. I like a lot of the songs on Senjutsu.
Right.
There's some throwaway stuff in both.
Yeah.
For me personally, my two favorite post 2000 albums are Brave New World and Dance of Death.
I love Dance of Death. That's a really good one.
I like Dance of Death is a very bright sounding record.
Mm-hmm. Passchendaele is outstanding.
Yeah.
That's one of their best.
I think that's very underrated.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. Their first 2 or 3 albums that they made post reunion with Bruce Dickinson, I think, are some of the best material in all their catalog. Now, it's a more progressive sound ever since they brought Bruce back in. And this is all the direction of Steve Harris. So people like to blame other members and whatnot and think that, it's because they've got 3 guitarists in the lineup and stuff like that now, and they need to kick Janet Gears out. And I don't know why people say stuff like that. This is all run by Steve Harris. It's what he's looking to do. And he has always wanted the band to be progressive. And I think with this album, they're really getting there now. But I don't know that they need to be. It's good stuff. It's sort of like you said. I think there needs to be some editing on it, and might be able to make this thing more memorable if it was cut down to 55 minutes. I think that would be an ideal time for this.
No one wants to say that to Steve Harris, though.
No, I know.
No one wants to go in and say, "Hey, Steve, you know what? Hell on Earth is a great track, but can we shave off about 3 minutes?"
Right. We could get it all on one disc if you shave off 3 minutes,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in this album. Like going through the track listing, I love the title track, Senjutsu. I love Stratego.
Yeah. Stratego. But what's the first track that's on this? Well, Senjutsu.
Senjutsu, yeah.
It's slow. It's dirgy.
Yeah.
It works, but it's 6 minutes long or something. And it just takes a while. Once that track, you get past that, I think the album is great. That's the one track I would leave off.
Senjutsu?
I don't dislike it. It's just that it works great as an opener. And the album is a double disc set, so you can kind of take it as such. But it's the track that I'm always ready to skip through. I want to get to the second one, Strangiato, on here, which I think is the best track on the album. It's the most Iron Maiden-esque sounding tune that's on here, even though I actually like the first single, Writing on the Wall. That one's got this sort of Western vibe feel to this thing that's very different from Maiden. And I do like that song. So those two songs back to back on here are great, but I just find myself not remembering, not sticking with the rest of the album.
Yeah, and for me, my weak track, it's still, and I said this in my review, and it's still the weakest track I feel, is Lost in a Lost World. I just really don't like that much.
I like it. I don't dislike it, but I know what you mean by it. It is one of those ones that, I mean, the refrain on it, Lost in a Lost World, and the way that that's repetitive within that and so forth.
That's what I don't like.
It even takes a while to get to that. Like, I'll be listening to it and not know which song I'm in because they don't get to a refrain. So quite a ways into the song kind of a thing. And it is one that I could take or leave on this.
One thing I noticed too is that Dave Murray doesn't have any writing credits on this album.
I noticed that too, and I thought that was very odd. I forget how long it's been, but it's been a long time since he didn't have any writing credits on an album. Yeah. So I don't know what that's all about, but yeah, I don't know whether that would change anything or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and that's why I like when Yannick Gers comes in and writes some songs, because I think he's got a different style of writing, which makes it refreshing. You know what I mean? So let me ask you, I mean, we didn't talk about this, but what if this is Maiden's last record? Is this like a good way to go out, or are you hoping they come out with something else?
They need another one. One of my favorite albums by them is the album Final Frontier, right? The one that's right before Book of Souls. I think I ranked that one as like number 3 on my ranking. It is, for me, out of all the ones that they've made post-reunion, is my favorite. And it outdoes a number of the original classic albums. And to me, that album, if they had ended on that, they need another album like that. It's got, each song is individual, stands out on its own. It's unique. They broke some new ground and stuff that they were doing with it. But when it kicks in, it's Iron Maiden. And there's none of this long, dirgy buildup. There's stuff that's like Fear of the Dark that has slow, melodic, eerie intros on it, but it works. And yeah, if this were to be the last album, no, I would not be happy. It's a good album and I'm enjoying it. But if I have to wait 6 more years for something like this, no.
What would be cool is if Maiden, because Maiden could do this, they could release an album in a year from now.
Of course.
Just go into the studio and try to bang out some songs that are like 4 or 5 minutes long, nothing more than 5 minutes. Just some real, maybe even harken back to the first couple records with Paul Di'Anno. Maybe do some punk influence type stuff and
heavy punk, do-it-yourself vibe recording.
Yeah, Ixnay the prog stuff, Ixnay the 12-minute long songs, and just come out with a real just heavy rockin' record with nothing more than 5 minutes. They could do that very easily.
Oh God, that would be great. I don't think any of those members are going to watch this video and take that advice, but man, wouldn't it be great?
I agree with you though. I think I want one more album out of them at least. I don't want Senjutsu to be the last one.
Yeah, I think they need to come back with a single disc album. It's a reasonable time. It's not jam-packed with stuff that should have been edited. Yeah. And these long intros, you can have a couple of those on the album, but they really need to come back and kick right in with some classic sounding Maiden vibe on tracks. And let's hope that they do. I mean, 6 years on this, and this was recorded before the pandemic, and they sat on it for 1.5 years before releasing it. So we really should have gotten this at about 4.5 years from the last one. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. This is our real review, so to speak, our honest review of this and just how we're feeling about it after 6 weeks, give or take.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
After listening to this, because I always go back and listen to classic Maiden. So I was listening to Peace of Mind. Somewhere in Time is my favorite Iron Maiden album. But I noticed with Somewhere in Time, the speed of the songs, and Maiden was never a thrash band.
Right.
But they wrote fast songs. There's nothing really that fast on this record.
Not at all. Yeah. No, I
think it needed some speed. Maybe a couple songs where it's like, it just gets you going. Like these are more slow, dirgy, proggy, like heady type songs.
Yeah, they're mid-tempo. Everything on here is about the same tempo. Strangely Auto is about the only one that really picks up the pace, from the get-go on here. And I agree. And I think that's part of the album. It's both what I like and I don't like. This is an album that has the same feel throughout it. So I actually enjoy that aspect. It's not a bunch of different tracks that may work or may not work or whatnot. If you like one of these tracks, you're going to like everything that's on here. And so I do enjoy that. And that's why I still put the album on. And then I find myself enjoying it. But the thing is when I think about the album, not much comes to mind on it. And I think it's because we don't have those variety of tracks. We don't have the something that is the faster. I mean, you kind of said it. It's not really thrash, but it is in that heavier vein. This is just all mid-tempo.
Yeah. I mean, think about Brave New World, the song Wicker Man. I mean, that stands alone.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Dance of Death with Passchendaele.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That stands alone.
Right.
Nothing really, like, you're right. There's nothing really that kind of stands on its own. It's almost like you have to listen to the full record or not.
That's right. I've tried going in and starting with a particular track in the middle of the album, and it just doesn't work for me. Yeah. I have to start at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of how the album is. It feels like you have to listen to the whole thing, and then you build and you grow into it, kind of a thing, through the listening. And maybe that's what they were going for. This is definitely an album that is a grower. It wasn't something that from the first listen I liked. It took 3-4 listens into it before I could wrap my head around what this was.
Right.
And then I've enjoyed it since then, but it's definitely one that took some investing of my energy into.
I will probably not listen to it all the way through that much more. I mean, I like the album, but I'm going to go back to other Maiden records.
Yeah, I definitely will enjoy this probably for the remainder of the year, meaning the cycle of the album itself is something new, and I'll pull it out at various times and so forth. But I do think this is going to slip back in to the catalog and not be one I reach for. It'll for me at least, it'll be a lot like Book of Souls. It'll be something that, okay, it was fine at the time, but I'm looking for something else, and I'll be reaching for a different album. So there you go. That's where we are with this, and maybe we revisit this in a year and see if we've changed our opinion on it or not, or whether Maiden did anything.
And I'll be interested to read some of the comments on this video, because like I said, there's a lot of people who are saying either A, this is their best album ever,
right,
or B, this is the best album since Bruce has come back. And I don't think you and I agree on any of that.
We don't. So certainly if you're one of those people out there that feels that way, leave your comments. Let us know your thoughts on it. We are just curious, and this is just our take on it. Both of us have done separate reviews on our YouTube channel. Certainly head over to Chris Propfe's channel and check him out. I'm going to leave a link in the description, but you can get a take. I'll leave a link for the review that I did on this. And, compare that against what we're talking about here. This is now time that we've lived with it and we've grown with it, and we've got a different take on it at this point. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Certainly comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll be talking to you later. Take care, guys. Thanks, Chris.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Brennan.